Despite his own corporation collapsing, Joel Osteen lectures about living your greatest life right now. He revealed his true nature after the Hurricane Harvey disaster when he declined to assist flood victims. The shooting at the church revealed serious security flaws. They spend more on TV broadcasts than aiding the underprivileged, according to financial data. He is no longer even preaching Christianity, according to other pastors. Another crisis is looming, according to family sources, which might permanently destroy his ministry. Here are all the issues Joel Osteen is having. On March 5, 1963, Joel Osteen was born in Houston, Texas. He was not raised in a typical household. He was one of 6 kids in a household founded on faith and lofty goals. Joel's father, John Osteen, was a conventional Southern Baptist pastor until 4 years before Joel's birth. John began a new endeavor in 1959, which would eventually become Lakewood Church, abandoning the old practices. In addition to being busy, the Osteen family was focused. Dodie, his mother, supported John through all of his highs and lows. Joel watched his parents face adversity with faith as a child. The birth of his sister Lisa in 1958, who had significant problems, rocked the family. But it also turned out to be a pivotal moment. Their congregation was centered around John and Dodie's strong belief in faith healing. Although Joel's siblings took different routes, they all contributed to the family's expanding impact. Lisa would later serve as an associate pastor at Lakewood. Along with being a missionary, his brother Paul went on to become a vascular surgeon. Their lives were centered on service, molded by early adversity and strong religious convictions. The Lakewood Church narrative starts in the most surprising way. John and Dodie established a church in an old feed shop on Houston's northeast side on Mother's Day in May 1959. It only had 234 seats. Initially, it was known as Lakewood Baptist Church. That name, however, was short-lived. After the Baptist portion was removed, the church was converted into a gathering place for believers in healing and miracles. Over 5,000 people were members of Lakewood by the end of the 1970s. It had evolved into a movement. Joel had no desire to preach, at least not first. He was quiet, even bashful. He completed his education at Houston's Humble High School in 1981. Neither his personality nor his voice made him stand out. Because he remained behind the scenes, he stood out. Following high school, he studied radio and television communications at Oral Roberts University in Oklahoma. He did not, however, complete. Less than a year later, he left school. It wasn't because he was aimless. It was because he was already aware of his goals. Joel returned to Houston at the age of 19 in 1982. He did not intend to preach. He instead concentrated on a topic that, at the time, relatively few churches understood: the TV. He started Lakewood's television ministry from the beginning. 1 cable channel nationwide, 1 local station. And it was the start. Joel dedicated himself to that effort for the next 17 years. He made a video. He made editing changes. He even followed his father's theatrical attire. He ensured that every broadcast looked flawless. In his opinion, the church's message ought to be as polished as anything that airs on network television. He didn't fail in his decision to forego education and pursue a career in media. There was a setup. Joel never held a pulpit position, yet he helped make Lakewood Church a household name. Despite staying out of the spotlight, he was influencing how people perceived Lakewood. Transmitted via broadcast. Joel grew up in a religiously oriented household. Beyond being preachers, his parents were more. They were illustrations. Dodie, his mother, was given a terminal cancer diagnosis in 1981. The family persisted, but the doctors did not. Dodie lived, and that incident was included in their message. Never give up on your beliefs. Prayer and optimism were more than simply platitudes. They were ingrained in the Osteen household. Joel was taking it all in, despite working behind the scenes. He saw what was effective. He observed how his father motivated others. His own opinions evolved over time, influenced by editing hundreds of hours of sermons rather than seminary. He was not even aware that he was studying. Preaching was never his intention. He was asked repeatedly by his father. Joel said no every time. He would say, "Daddy, you're the preacher. Who is a better preacher than you?" That changed in January 1999, though. Joel finally agreed to talk that month. He preached for the first time on January 17th. He felt anxious. He spoke quickly. He told jokes and told family stories. He merely wants to establish a connection. He had no idea what lay ahead. 6 days later, his father died after an unexpected heart attack. The shock was unexpected. The final sermon Joel's father would ever hear was his very first one. There was a void in the church after John's passing. There was no obvious successor to Lakewood, which had almost 6,000 members. Joel lacked any genuine schooling, a theological degree, and preaching experience. However, everyone turned to him. Joel took up the role despite his grief and the fact that he had never desired it. Less than 6 months after his father's death, Joel Osteen was formally sworn in as senior pastor of Lakewood Church on June 7, 1999. He had barely given a few sermons, yet something clicked. Individuals reacted. The church quickly expanded. Those 6,000 people more than tripled in just 5 years. The church was drawing between 25,000 and 30,000 people each week by 2004. Lakewood was now the largest church in the nation. That was not an accident. Joel quadrupled the church's television advertising budget. He battled for more favorable time slots in big cities. He placed billboards with the name of Lakewood. He also made sure that his sermons were clear and encouraging. Lakewood became much more than just a neighborhood church thanks to this combination of preaching, media, and hope. It moved. The sanctuary's original 8,000 seats were insufficient. Joel began to think broadly as a result. He also wasn't bashful about it. He aloud predicted that Lakewood may eventually host 100,000 visitors each weekend. That at the moment sounded nearly absurd. However, given the rate of growth, it didn't seem feasible. And then the most audacious move of all. Lakewood agreed to a 30-year lease on the Compact Center in 2003. It was the venue where the Houston Rockets used to play and where they won NBA titles. With the option to extend it for an additional 30 years at a cost of $22 million, Lakewood paid $12 million for the lease. However, the refurbishment was the true shock. The church promised to totally renovate the arena for between $90 million and $95 million. Today, that amounts to almost $158 million. Not only did they install a few lights and call it a day, they destroyed the place. Inside, there were 5 new stories. Indoor waterfalls, media rooms, miles of carpets, and classrooms. Everything was reconstructed from the ground up. The completion took almost 15 months. For $7.5 million, Lakewood also purchased the building outright in 2010. Then came the momentous day. Lakewood's brand new residence opened its doors on July 16, 2005. The 16,000 seats were all occupied. Another million watched from home. It was now a place of prayer for those who had previously sat there to watch basketball. It was everything different. Over 40,000 people turned up. In over 100 countries, there were around 10 million TV viewers. Originally a tiny church in Northeast Houston, it is today a major global institution located in the center of Greenway Plaza. But it was more than the masses or the edifice. Joel's message was it. Unlike many other preachers, he did not focus on sin and condemnation. His attention was diverted. Positive. Thankfulness. Self-esteem. His sermons seemed less like cautions than like inspiration. Critics have dubbed it Christian light. Some claimed it lacked nuance. Still, people turned up. They paid attention. His books are read by them. And they return time and time again. Nobody anticipated Your Best Life Now's success when he released it in October 2004. It sold more than 500,000 copies by December, which was only 3 months later. It reached the 1 million milestone in May 2005. For over 200 weeks, it remained on the New York Times bestseller list. It's nearly 4 years. It has sold more than 4 million copies globally as of right now. Joel's preaching had changed. He had a brand to develop. He didn't have to, but he didn't accept a pay from Lakewood after 2005. His books, 15 and counting, earned millions of dollars. Become a Better You was the only one that brought him $13 million. His live speeches filled venues. A single appearance might bring in between $100,000 and $200,000. His goods were in high demand. Gifts, clothing, CDs, and books. He even generated additional income from his enormous social media following, which included 25 million Facebook fans, 10 million Twitter followers, and 5 million Instagram followers. Joel and Victoria amassed a personal fortune of an estimated $100 million together. Joel's Night of Hope tour began in 2013. This was no ordinary church service. They paid for it. He reserved arenas the size of the NBA all around the nation. The cost of each ticket was about $15. He sold out the American Airlines Arena in Miami on March 11, 2013. It can accommodate more than 20,000 people. It continued to expand. By 2019, it has made it to Wembley Arena in London. And Lakewood spent $6.7 million on these activities in only 2017. Joel took a distinct stance on media as well. He became popular rather than restricted to Christian TV networks. On Oprah, he appeared. He and Larry King took a seat. On Good Morning America, he made an appearance. People who had never set foot in a church were reached by him. He caused a stir with his Larry King Live interview in 2005. His conversations with Oprah influenced how his message was perceived. He had evolved beyond his role as a pastor. Regardless of religion, he was an inspiration to everyone. He had a straightforward message. Have hope, believe in better, and never give up. Millions of people were impacted. At present, the Osteen brand generates approximately $55 million annually. This, however, is something that many people find surprising. Missions and outreach receive only around $1.2 million of Lakewood's $90 million annual budget. It's only 1.3%. The weekly services, which cost $31.7 million, and the TV ministry, which costs an additional $25.1 million, receive the majority of the funding. It receives $6.7 million for Night of Hope. The remainder is used for administration, staff, and fundraising. Many individuals are surprised by that breakdown. This large, affluent church that contributes so little to conventional charity work causes discomfort for some. However, some also highlight the magnitude of the impact. Every week, the message reaches millions. The books are read by millions. And a building that was once filled with basketball cheers but is now filled with prayer and hope sees thousands of people enter. On the day he entered a tiny jewelry store in Houston, Joel Osteen had no exceptional plans. It has nothing to do with changing the battery in a watch. That's that. However, Victoria Iloff was standing behind the counter, working at her mother's store as a young psychology student. April 1985 was the one time that would alter everything. On April 4, 1987, 2 years later, they tied the knot. Joel was still doing his father's ministry in the background at the time. He was not a celebrity or on stage, and Victoria, although growing up in a religious household, also had no desire to live a life in the spotlight. Her father was an engineer with NASA who worked on the Saturn rocket. Sunday school was taught by her mother. The foundation of their family was faith, structure, and science. The partnership that today affects millions of people began with a simple encounter in a store. Together, Joel and Victoria have led Lakewood Church through both adulation and controversy for almost 40 years. What started as a small watch battery evolved into a globally recognized movement. Even more unexpected is Victoria's personal path. Her family relocated to Houston when she was just 2 years old, despite her 1961 birth in Huntsville, Alabama. Her father had accepted a NASA position. Her early years were characterized by consistent church customs and peaceful routines. She was unaware that she would rise to prominence as a vocalist in one of America's largest churches when she first met Joel. She managed background duties and assisted with offerings at first, keeping things straightforward. However, she launched the Lakewood Church Women's Ministry in 2003, which was a significant endeavor. That modest beginning grew into something that now annually reaches thousands. She became more and more noticeable on stage. Networks broadcast what she said. Her pictures spread across residences. Her book then appeared. Love Your Life, which she published in 2008, entered the New York Times bestsellers list at number 2. The first run of the print? 750,000 copies, to be exact. She transitioned from a quiet assistant to a prominent person in American religion, and from clerk to co-pastor. And she carried herself with poised assurance. Victoria and Joel's children were born amid this expanding tornado. First to arrive on April 20, 1995, was Jonathan. Then, on November 9, 1998, Alexandra came. The attention that Lakewood's children received grew along with their effect. However, each of them entered that area in a unique manner. After completing his studies in film at the University of Texas at Austin, Jonathan graduated in 2017. He had already taken the lead in worship before that. By 2016, he was performing with Alexandra in front of up to 45,000 people. San Francisco's America's Night of Hope was one of such evenings. Jonathan continued beyond music. Writing songs for Lakewood's young adult CDs, he also pursued a career as a songwriter and music producer. On Father's Day in 2019, he delivered his debut sermon. At that point, the vocalist gave way to the speaker. Alexandra also remained near the ministry's center. She started singing lead in Lakewood's worship group, Elwaya. Their music quickly went viral on the internet. Music such as I've Got a Fire amassed hundreds of thousands of Spotify plays. It wasn't simply their parents' wave that the Austin kids were surfing. By influencing the church's youth programs and music in ways that appealed to a younger audience, they were leading a portion of it. However, something more profound is happening behind all of this. A statement that has attracted millions of people, but it has also sparked a flurry of criticism. Joel Osteen's theology, preaching style, and weekly message are all strongly linked to the prosperity gospel and word of faith movements. These principles guarantee success, prosperity, and good health. Joel has a clear version of that. God wants you to live abundantly rather than in hardship. He asserts that God wants you to live a healthy life, pay your obligations, and avoid debt. That is a strong but contentious notion. There are those who adore it. Others claim that it is not just improper but also harmful. According to traditional Christian belief, hardship is a part of life and having faith isn't about wealth. And that you don't have control over anything. That notion is reversed by prosperity preaching, however. It implies that blessings might enter your life like a switch triggered by your words and beliefs. Every week, Joel's church welcomes almost 40,000 people. His personal fortune, which is thought to be between $40 and $60 million, only serves to feed the controversy, as his sermons are heard by millions of people. His speech runs the risk of blaming the poor for their hardships, according to critics, as if not being wealthy or healthy indicates that one didn't put in enough effort. According to them, it turns Christianity into something mushy and superficial that is less about transformation and more about feeling good. Joel frequently states that he wishes to uplift others. He wishes to uplift them. Nonetheless, some theologians refer to it as Christianity without a cross. He doesn't discuss sin very often. Hell, repentance, or both. He has acknowledged avoiding those subjects in interviews. He emphasizes optimism and becoming the best version of oneself. That's what his books and sermons are all about: positive messages, self-help tips, and encouraging remarks. However, some argue that flair comes at a price. It omits the most difficult aspects of Christianity. It transforms salvation into self-assurance. It is a message that creates happier pagan people rather than genuine believers, according to one expert. Even other preachers have voiced their opinions. The message of Osteen was dubbed the cotton candy gospel by theologian Michael Horton. It may be sweet, but it is not nourishing. Joel, he claimed, reads the Bible like a fortune cookie, ignoring the verses about suffering and searching for pleasant ones. And further theologian, J.I. Packer noted that completely avoiding repentance is a warning sign. There are others who concur. This, they claim, is not merely a gentle message. The image is warped. The term heretic is even used by some. And many continue to observe. How baptism and communion are handled at Lakewood Church is another contentious issue. Crucial components of the centuries-old Christian heritage are these. However, for a while, others claimed that Lakewood hardly did either. In a church this size, they said, communion wasn't a regular part of Sunday services and baptisms were uncommon, which caused some people to take notice, as well as inquiries. But things have changed. Joel performed baptisms for hundreds of individuals on April 26, 2025, at a sizable church gathering. Thus, the customs are still in place. It's because they're not always in the spotlight. Church doctrine continues to support communion. It is advised. The impression that it is absent hasn't changed, even though it might not occur weekly like it does in other churches. It may be another indication to some that the more complex religious traditions are being exchanged for something more straightforward and marketable. When COVID-19 was wreaking havoc around the world in July 2020, Lakewood Church made a decision that shocked many. Under Joel Osteen's leadership, the largest megachurch in America borrowed $4.4 million from the federal Paycheck Protection Program. During the shutdowns, this initiative was designed to assist organizations and small businesses in keeping their employees paid. Lakewood, however, wasn't a tiny place. Its annual budget was close to $90 million, and its pastor had a net worth of between $50 million and $100 million. The news was taken seriously. The loan, which covered the salaries and benefits of about 370 employees, was one of the biggest given out in Houston that month. In-person services were also put on hold for 7 months. Pressure increased in tandem with the backlash. The separation of church and state was allegedly compromised, according to some. Ultimately, Lakewood consented to repay the entire amount in October 2021. They maintained that not a single penny was spent by Joel or his wife, Victoria. The harm was done, though. The controversy spurred a nationwide discussion about the role of megachurches in government aid programs and how they managed their finances. However, if that caused them to pause, what followed left them stunned. Only $1.2 million was being spent on outreach and missions, according to one of Lakewood's financial reports. Just 1.3% of a yearly budget of $90 million is allocated to such. It was startling for a church of its magnitude. People typically donate with the expectation that their funds would benefit the community rather than support a media empire. Yet Lakewood spent $31.7 million on weekly services and programs and $25.1 million on its television broadcasts. They spent an additional $6.7 million on Night of Hope events, and more than $11 million was allocated to fundraising and management. Such expenditures gave a clear picture. Lakewood was a brand as well as a church. Furthermore, it appeared like building that brand was more important than aiding those in need. Even nevertheless, Joel Osteen has never hesitated to clarify that he does not receive anything from the church. He gave up collecting one in 2004 or 2005. However, he is not required to. He has a net worth of between $50 million and $100 million. Church donations did not provide that funding. It originated from all of the merchandise associated with his name, his books, and his speaking engagements. In 2004, his debut book, Your Best Life Now, was published. Over 4 million copies were sold, and it was on the New York Times bestseller list for over 4 years. In royalties and advances alone, his second book earned over $13 million. In Houston, Joel and Victoria reside in a home that is more than 17,000 square feet in size. It is now worth up to $16 million, but they paid $10.5 million for it in 2010. They also have a second residence that is worth roughly $3 million. They paid property taxes alone totaling about $250,000 in a single year. Joel may not be employed by the church, but there's no doubting that his platform has brought him a fortune. There are others that admire it. For others, it's evidence of a serious problem. Additionally, there is the lawsuit. A band from New York named the American Dollar sued Lakewood Church for $3 million in federal court in 2011. They alleged that a 58-second snippet of their song, "Signaling Through the Flames," was used without their consent in a DVD commercial. That year, the license had already expired. In February. This wasn't just about money, the band said. Being associated with a televangelist without their consent was the issue. The church said that there was a miscommunication. The clip, they thought, was still covered under the license. A judge ruled in favor of Lakewood in February 2012. Although the band received nothing, the entire situation demonstrated the size and complexity of Lakewood's media operation. Preaching wasn't the only topic. Even a few seconds of background music may start a multi-million-dollar argument in this business. Another storm struck after 6 years. It's a real one, but not legal. Houston was devastated by Hurricane Harvey in August 2017, forcing thousands of people to relocate. Lakewood Church, which once served as the Compact Center and had space for more than 16,000 people, was in the middle of everything. The doors remained closed, however. The church announced that it was inaccessible due to flooding on Facebook. On the other hand, people began posting films and images online. The church's surroundings appeared to be dry. There was nothing wrong with the streets. Outrage was immediate. The phrase "Open Lakewood Church" went viral on Twitter. The same question was being asked by residents and celebrities alike. Joel Osteen could have opened his church to assist, but he didn't. According to Lakewood staff, they were awaiting the official shelters to fill up. Though that wasn't enough, they also shared photos of some water in the building's lower levels. What people saw did not match the photographs. Local companies like Mattress Max Gallery Furniture immediately opened for business in the interim. Lakewood seems even more dreadful after that comparison. Days of pressure later, the church finally opened as a shelter. However, the delay left Austin's reputation marred in a way that has persisted until this day. It revealed the true priorities of the church, which many found upsetting. Though years went by, the recollection remained. When Hurricane Beryl struck Houston in July 2025 and left millions without power, people began to watch Lakewood once more. The church responded this time. They distributed 40,000 water bottles. To aid in cooling, they opened up. They fed hundreds, but it made no difference. Jokes and memes became viral on the internet. He was locking the doors once more, people were saying. Some people mockingly asked if Austin's mansion was open as well, posting images of it even when he wasn't. This time, a churchgoer acknowledged that they were surprised to see the building open. Something more profound was revealed in that moment. The past haunted them even as Lakewood attempted to help. A trust gap that they were still unable to bridge was caused by one error during Harvey. The story that may be the most difficult to forget comes last. That took place in 2014. After a horrific incident occurred during a service, a family filed a lawsuit against Lakewood Church. Their 18-month-old daughter was still in her safety seat when one of the ushers allegedly snatched it and tossed it off a chair. The child hit the floor face down. She suffered severe injuries. The family claimed that the trauma compelled them to completely leave Texas. Lakewood denied the occurrence. They claimed to have uncovered no witnesses, but according to court documents, they settled with the family for $15,000. Initially, the church attempted to use the Charitable Immunity Act to assert its immunity. That was not a stick. This was not the first time Lakewood had been the target of such accusations. The case brought up important issues regarding the church's ability to safeguard its members, particularly the most vulnerable. On Sunday, February 11, 2024, a peaceful Sunday afternoon at Houston's Lakewood Church became unimaginable. Just before the Spanish-language ceremony began, Jenessa Yvonne Moreno entered the room with her son, who was 7 years old. She carried a backpack and wore a trench coat. A gun, AR-15, was concealed beneath the garment. Another gun and what she claimed was a bomb were in her luggage. At precisely 1:53 p.m., she started shooting. She stood just outside the place of worship in a hallway. Within a few seconds, she fired about 30 shots. A 47-year-old man sustained a leg injury. People let out screams as two security personnel who were not on duty ran in. They retaliated. Moreno was killed. Her own son was shot in the head during the confusion, though. There was more to the story. It was made worse by what investigators discovered. Moreno had a Palestine sticker on his AR-15. Disturbing notes, anti-Semitic texts, conspiracy theories, and even sympathy for terrorists were among her possessions. She suffered from schizophrenia. She had, however, lawfully purchased that AR-15 only 2 months prior. She was unabated by red flag laws. The state of Texas had none. That small flaw in the system had a lasting impact on life. Although the entire event lasted only a few minutes, it had a profound impact on the nation. The worst thing, too? The injuries to Samuel were devastating. He had a bullet that tore through his skull. They had to take half of it out. 2 brain surgeries were performed on him in a single day. His frontal lobe, which governs personality and decision-making, was missing a significant portion. His heart repeatedly stopped during operation. For weeks, physicians were unable to even monitor his brain activity. For EEG cables, his scalp was too delicate. After 13 days, the ventilator was removed. His life was never the same, yet he lived. He went to live with his paternal grandmother after the attack. Until her death the next year, she looked after him. Later, she was captured on security footage walking in composedly, holding her son's hand. She entered the corridor and aimed the gun at an unarmed guard. A few seconds later, the firing started. Later, investigators acknowledged that the church's security was not perfect. The enormous structure is meant to be open and inviting. That candor turned into a liability. It was too simple for someone who was determined to get past it. Since then, many people have wondered how places of worship can remain secure without becoming fortifications. The following Sunday, Lakewood's focal point, Joel Osteen, took the stage. His message? Have faith instead of fear. He urged people to persevere and not hide. It was an opportunity to shine brighter, he remarked. The victims were in his prayers. There were some who valued the comfort, including Moreno's family. Some didn't. They thought Osteen's remarks were meaningless. Opponents claimed he disregarded the actual issues, such as untreated mental illness and the ease with which a person with a violent past could purchase a firearm. Among those who criticized Samuel was his own grandmother. Hope and healing were not all she desired. Then another defeat. On July 30, 2025, Joel Osteen revealed some private information. Dolores Dodie Osteen, his mother, had died at the age of 91. At home, she passed away quietly. She was more to Lakewood than just Joel's mom. Known as Mama Dodie, she was a co-founder, a strong lady, and the center of the church from the start. Joel referred to her as a divine servant, the adored matriarch, and an inspiration to millions. Even now, Joel's wife, Victoria Osteen, is very involved. She is still leading, speaking, and preaching. She published a new book titled Grace to Go and started a podcast called Victoria and Friends in 2025. The world has changed around them, yet she still plays a significant role in Lakewood's voice. There are more inquiries, the pews are empty, and the hurt from that February afternoon is still there.